Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Welcome to the press conference before the debate on human rights in illegally annexed Crimea. The debate is to take place tomorrow. It will be crowned by hopefully adoption of the resolution. The text of this resolution is a matter of consensus of the biggest political groups within European Parliament, negotiated yesterday. I was privileged to participate in these negotiations, and I must say that the text is considerably balanced and indicating all major legal and factual issues related to illegal annexation of Crimea by the Russian Federation. The co-host of today's conference is Kosma Złotowski, the MEP, Polish MEP of the ECR group, and it is our privilege to host witnesses coming directly from Crimea. It is the father of a person imprisoned for actions that were taken before annexation of Crimea, even before effective aggression on Crimea. So on February 26 of 2014, he'll give his testimony later today during the conference we co-host with Mr. Złotowski. He is the father of Mustafa Dehermenzi. The political prisoner is to speak today afternoon during the conference. Next person is the father of the young man kidnapped and abducted. He, just a few moments ago, presented charts showing the moment of kidnapping by the Russian traffic police, 3 cars of traffic police. He is to give his testimony also during this conference. And we are privileged to host the excellent lawyer, outstanding lawyer specializing in international law and human rights, who is to describe the legal situation of all prisoners, people that were kidnapped, missing persons. Also, we have to remember that many people belonging to the group, indigenous ethnic group of Crimean Tatars, who are considered the indigenous people of Crimea, who were especially abducted after the annexation. The human rights situation after annexation has deteriorated considerably. Now I give the floor to Mr. Złotowski, and then the most important moment, testimony of witnesses. Last but not least, there is Mr. Riza Asanov here, the chair of Polish-based Foundation Crimea.
Szanowni Państwo.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to be speaking in Polish. Crimea was annexed by Russia, and this is a precedent in contemporary history which could have far-reaching consequences, because of course it is an unprecedented event, and we know that everybody has a reason to violate certain borders, but we know that usually we have to operate within a European order. And over the past couple of years, it seems that we have seemed to got used to the idea that the Russians are ruling in Crimea, but we should not get used to this. First of all, for one of the reasons we've said that I've said that this is a violation, an infringement of borders in contemporary Europe. We know that in the 40s, the 50s, the Tatars that were removed from Crimea, and now they're back on their own land. And we know, of course, that the situation is tragic now. And we're going to be hearing this for ourselves when we hear the testimonies from the witnesses, from people who actually live there and people who are experiencing this fate.
Thank you. Now the most important part, the testimony of witnesses, families of people who perished after annexation, illegal annexation of Crimea. First is Mr. Bekir Dagharemzi, the father of political prisoner Mustafa. Floor is yours. It will be Russian because of interpretation constraints.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Mustafa Dergunji's father. My son was arrested in 2015 on the 7th of May. As it turned out, he was arrested for participating on the 26th of February in 2014 in a peaceful rally for the territorial integrity of Ukraine. And a year later, my son was arrested. For 1 year and 10 months, he's been in prison now. They can't really charge him with anything. Our courts. We've had more than 70 trials by now, and not a single evidence and proof has been put forward. Because all that was happening was when Crimea was part of Ukraine. And we still cannot understand what our son is being tried for. When court sessions take place, all his rights are violated. The defense lawyers are not listened to. Nobody listens to their argument. And the only fault of my son seems to be the fact that he actually participated in the rally, peaceful rally, to protect the territorial integrity of Ukraine. I think that's the only accusation that has been put forward against him. He's been in prison for almost 2 years, even though he doesn't think he is guilty. But the Russian authorities, for some reason, believe that he is guilty for defending, for protesting against the territorial integrity of Russia. We don't understand how it could have been the case if the rally took place in Ukraine. Well, I just gave you this brief outline, but there's also a more severe case. I know that my son, even though he's in prison, he's in good shape and health. Ervin Ibragimov is sitting next to me. His situation is much worse than mine, because he doesn't know where his son is, what's happening to him. And if I may, I just will give more time to my colleague here, so he could talk about his son. Mr. Ibragimov, certainly. Good morning. I'm Ibrahim Irvin's father. He was abducted in 2016. It's been 10 months now. He took part as a participant in a number of rallies on the 26th of February, and his place was searched as well. He's a member of the World Tatars Congress. He's the Mejlis member, Kurultai member. He's an ex-member of the City Council when Crimea was Ukraine. 10 months, after 10 months in prison, despite all my appeals, to the authorities in Russia, including the Presidential Human Rights Commissioner, silence is reigning. Nobody's responding. I do apologize about being emotional here, but what I have in front of me here is a poster that's been plastered all over Crimea. We put it all over Crimea, but law enforcement agencies tried to remove it. We also posted to the YouTube. He was stopped 300 meters before he came to his home. The traffic police stopped him. Traffic police car stopped him, and you can see 3 cars there. And the police officers left their car and then started walking towards Ford Transit vehicle that my son was in, and then they grabbed him and took him away. When I found this car, my son's car, I was lucky that there was evidence available. That is from a video surveillance camera from a nearby shop. And owing to this video surveillance camera images, I could actually go and ask the Federal Security Service of Russia to investigate. But the Federal Security Service of Russia refused to accept my application. Well, owing to the work of civil society activists who were supported by my son, and whose my son supported as well, they actually tried to figure out the direction of their movement. I found out later that before the 18th of May, when he was abducted, they had laid flowers at the day, during the day of mourning, and then went to the prayers, and they said that they've been followed by a car. But I think he said that it was owing to the participation in the day of mourning. He never thought he would be abducted, even though as the time elapsed, I started learning about certain nuances, interesting nuances, that he had been followed and surveillance has been placed around him 2 weeks prior to that. He was receiving threats, and they were offering him a law enforcement. They were offering jobs and collaboration with the authorities, and he refused. He declined that, and they threatened that if you don't collaborate with us, you will not get a job anywhere else. So this is one of many things I've been learning since his abduction, and I would like to appeal to you, if you possibly can, do help. Please help. There are a lot of people like him around Crimea. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Now, I would like to ask the outstanding lawyer based in Crimea and bravely defending people perishing after annexation of Crimea, people of Crimea Tatar descent, for his brave activity. He was sentenced this year in January of 2017, 10 days of administrative detention by the de facto authorities of Crimea. Mr. Emil Kuredinov, floor is yours.
Здравствуйте. Огромное спасибо за такие слова.
Good morning. Thank you very much for these words. It's already have been 3 years since I and my colleagues, 3 years of presence of the Russian Federation de facto on the territory of Crimea. We have been noticing a huge amount of violations of human rights. This is already an enormous mass of cases that you can call it only repression against the ethnic population, Crimean Tatars, Crimean Muslims, against the civil rights activists, journalists, etc. That's why we have a lot of facts. We have also a lot of cases in the courts. Unfortunately, these court cases are not moving the way it has to be moving through the court system, within the legal system. I will try to explain you shortly how we work and what direction and what's going on now on the territory of Crimea. The first is that our people are being split in two parts. If you are a Muslim, that you completely are, the Muslim believer, so you have some alternate point of view. What's going on in Crimea that is against what the government thinks, so you are a terrorist. If you are the person, a member of Majlis, then automatically you are being called extremist. If you are a journalist, and so you are extremist and separatist. This way Russian legislation allows you to do that, and it's the instrument of the fight against any other opinions on the territory of Crimea. During the last 6 months, we note such events at the punitive psychiatry. Practically, we are going back into the history of the Soviet Union when without any decision of the courts, just because the person investigates or decides that you are going to the psychiatric hospital to be evaluated, but practically they have tortured you, they ask you about your political opinions, what is your opinion with regard to the current power system, etc. For me, it's exactly as it has punitive psychiatry. Maybe, it's not such a harsh form, but if we are not going to talk about it, it becomes something harsher, even using the psychotropic medication, etc. Please pay attention to this. Also, one of the terrible events that's happening on Crimea, it's kidnapping. People being kidnapped. Well, we have already seen on video that the people using the police uniform doing this. Sometimes even the people military or military uniform or some special forces units or police guards. So this is a very terrible thing, and it's something unaccountable for. The first person who was kidnapped and killed later on, Rishat Ahmetov, it's a person that as one person decided to make a strike against it. So we on video can see who did that, but we have not seen so far not even one case that be duly investigated. We were not told who are those people who kidnapped our compatriots and do with them such a terrible way. Violation has been documented by us from the very beginning, which means arrests of the people and then searches in their houses. But it's not just a search based on some order. No, it's like a special operation. The people's houses are being entered without any permission, even though if you have your children within your household. That's something they're trying to people to have a fear, because searches are not conducted this way. That is done specially, so the people are going to have fear. Also, we have seen the raids. We call it this way because you have a special military units that go in raids, cleaning practically everything during the markets where we have majority of Crimean Tatars, Muslims. They take these people into custody without documented it. They take pictures of these people. They try to take the DNA test. Some people agree with that. Some do not want to do that. So sometimes we feel that we live in ghetto. I'm really sorry to say that. And it is not being investigated proper way. We have sent complaints, we have sent requests, but no reaction at all. Everything duly conducted as based on law. Everything looks perfectly well. Then when our journalists are being persecuted, Nikolai Semene, he is a very famous journalist. I am his lawyer as well. He has a case because of separatist movement when he was talking about political situation in Crimea. We have the civil activists in Ukraine that they came to the court hearings and trying to talk about it. They would come to the places where the searches were conducted and have videotaped this. They have videotaped also the court hearings. Tens of young people, and it's tens and tens, and mostly that's the young Crimean Tatars. And they have done that. But these people now are persecuted as well. Before I've told here, 11 people were in jail from 10 to 15 days in jail. Practically, it was invented because the police said that they are trying to forward this information on some mass media, internet, etc. So that's, again, another way to have these people to be quiet, not to talk about it. They want our people just to sit home, be quiet. No, that's not going to happen. Also, I would like to say that the certain line is already behind the Russian bodies. They do repressions against the lawyers and civil activists. I don't want to talk about myself, that this is a fact, and I would like to talk about it because I want you to understand. I was in jail for 10 days. Practically everything what they had against me was invented. I was just a civil activist. I was driving with my colleague, so the car was stopped, so the people from the special forces came. They took me to the court, and they gave me as punishment 10 days. Nikolai Polosno, he is a lawyer of Artemy Chigozov. The day before I was arrested, he was taken out of his hotel because he just came to the hotel. He had a speech there. So he was taken to FSB and they interviewed him. So right now, a case is open against him. Another one, Umerov, it's also a very famous veteran of the national movement. So repressions against lawyers started. And I have to say that all of this is allowed based on the Russian legislation. The Russian legislation in the area of terrorism and illegal gathering is so not clear that it becomes the instrument how to fight the opposition. That's how the legislation, Russian legislation, looks like. Russia knows they are going to say that all Crimean Tatars are terrorists and extremists. Then the Crimean Tatars will be left by the international community. Just one simple example. It's not a secret that Russia wanted to agree first, had an agreement with the Majlis of Crimean Tatars. If they were not able to do that, they became the extremist organization. This is a fact. You can check on it. So we have violation all over the place. There are systematic, there are some active, correct investigations. So everything is done specially. So we would be quiet, not do anything, or just leave the country, leave Crimea. That would be ideal for Russia, just to leave. Thank you.
For this testimony, yes, certainly, this these facts were confirmed earlier in the parliament concerning Majlis and delegitimization of Majlis by Russian Federation and accusation of terrorism. It was confirmed by Mustafa Dzhamilev earlier during his presence in the European Parliament, and also by the leader of Majlis, Refat Chubarov, to the official representation of the Parliament going to Kiev and eastern Ukraine to assess the security situation. It's what is most appalling was also statements by Riza Asanov about cases of desecration of bodies of Crimean Tatars youth. So even those people who were killed by invaders, by occupying forces, were also the subject of desecration. It's well, the most barbarian action we can imagine. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think that time slot for this conference is almost over. Do we have still some time for questions? No, we do not. So thank you very much indeed. Of course, you are welcome to participate in public hearing that is to take place here in the Parliament and Louise Weiss building 4:30 today. Thank you.